Well, hi guys, welcome, and who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to my channel. It's quick, it's easy, it's free. Do it right now. Be part of the Who Dat family and share the Saints experience this season and beyond with me, Joe. Consider me a friend or a coworker. I love the Saints as much as you do. When you see my videos, you get to hear what I have to say. You let me know in the comments what you think. I respond to my comments, unlike some Saints providers. And today, we are going to be doing our monthly review of the positions of need for our Saints. We've got a video from September, we've got a video from October, and you guessed it, it's time in November. We're going to be looking at the greatest positions of need for the team. And our team at this point, it's the bye week. So we're 2-8. Overall, yeah, this team needs a lot of work. So, what's the positions of need? Here's the positions of need on offense. There you go. That's all the positions of need for the Saints. How about on defense? Yeah, we can do that. There you go. That's all your positions of need on defense. Now, all right, the Saints aren't that bad. There are players we're going to keep. There are players at certain positions that we're going to hope, stay on the team, play well, and start winning some ball games. But my point is, you can really take anything. And that's what's fun about this. There's not a wrong answer. You can really take anything. So maybe right now we're all pretty excited about the quarterback situation, whether you're a Tyler Shuck fan or a Spencer Rattler fan. I think it's a good idea that the Saints avoid quarterback this year in the draft. Just try to build a better team and let's see what we have with these two young pups, right? Middle-aged pups. But if you have a first-rate ground on a quarterback and that guy ends up in the second round, you might end up drafting a quarterback. He might be the best player on your board, and you feel like best player available, you have to do it. Now, I know that would bum a lot of people out. We're trying to build a better team. Don't be redundant with the picks. I'm just warning you ahead of time that this team could go anywhere, especially on defense. So you never know. If we're in position to draft the linebacker out of Ohio State, Arvell Reese, if we're in position to draft him with our first round pick, let's say we're picking eighth and he's still on the board, you kind of have to grab him. Even though you have Demario Davis, even though you have Pete Werner and Danny Stutzman and Isaiah Stallbird, yeah, there's a chance we're going to be redundant with a pick because this team just needs help everywhere. So that's my point to that. But I do think there are positions of need that should be addressed in an ideally perfect world where everything falls in the draft and everything falls in free agency just the right way. Certain players on the team actually progress, and then you can just grab a couple of pieces, you'll be okay. But no, this is probably going to be a couple of year rebuild. But I think there are some positions we need to focus on. Now I'm going to break the positions of need down in offense and defense again. And here we go. That's it on the bottom. The top line is offensive needs and the bottom line defensive needs. And yeah, on the bottom line, I've incorporated defensive tackle and defensive end into one category, defensive line. And because I did that, every single position on defense is on this chart. But we start from left to right, and this is how we're going to do it. It's most pressing need on offense. Our biggest needs, pretty obviously, a number one wide receiver would be nice. An offensive guard, maybe two. Yeah, we're talking starters here. That would be nice. a nice all around starting tight end would make this team really good. I think those three top needs there on offense, probably the top three needs this team needs altogether. I would I would prioritize those three positions before anything else. Now that's wild, but the reason why I say it is because, and the reason why I have offense and defense separated here is because I feel differently about both sides of the ball. On defense, I feel like if we're implementing Brandon Staley's defense, regardless of how current players are playing, I think Brandon Staley still has a type, and I think we've seen enough to kind of get a grasp on what he really wants. I'm pretty sure. And so in that case, the strength of the position of need on defense, it's kind of equal. It's kind of like you've got one piece at every level. You've got Chase Young at defensive line, you've got Demario Davis at linebacker, and you've got, Jonas Sanker and Quincy Riley in the secondary, Alante Taylor. So you've got a lot of pieces, but there may be a specific type Brandon Staley wants to go after. And regardless of who we have on the team right now, who's performing very well or is learning this and performing it okay, I still think Staley's going to have a type. Now, on offense, Kellen Moore may have a type, but we're not really quite sure what it is. I mean, from what I can gather, watching Kellen Moore in his, past jobs, he seems to just take whatever players are there and he can design an offense to make it work. How much say did Kellen Moore have when he was under Mike McCarthy in Dallas? I'm sure he had a say. I'm sure they agreed on a game plan and the type of players they wanted. They went out and got it. I'm not going to investigate draft picks from Dallas's past when Kellen Moore was there to try to determine what kind of player Kellen Moore wants. I feel like offense is offense. We know what we have. We know what we're lacking. I feel that way about defense too, but I really feel like any position on defense could be addressed and it wouldn't shock me. So that's the main reason I'm keeping offense and defense separate. I think with the offense it's crystal clear. You need a big wide receiver, a number one wide receiver. You need an all-around tight end. You need a good starting offensive guard, at least one, because, and we're going to break down every position. We're going to get in specifics in every position. Usually I pull up the active roster for the offense while we talk about offensive positions, and usually I pull up the active roster defense when we talk about defense. I'm going to do one better. I'm going to go position specific. We're not going to pull the whole roster up active. We're going to look at the Saints as a whole, including players that are at the position but are on IR, as well as players at the position that are on the practice squad. So we're going to take a bigger dive looking at each position here, and let's talk about how important it all is. You let me know in the comments what you think. I've got 10 positions listed here. It's basically just about everything. The only thing I don't have listed down here besides kicker, punter, long snapper, and fullback would be quarterback. Yeah, and center. I don't have center listed down here. We could definitely use depth at center. And we still don't know what we have at quarterback. For right now, I've got quarterback off the board. I'm not stoked with what I'm seeing in the draft at quarterback this year. I think you're going to have just as good of a class next year as you do this year. Tyler Shuck would have to fail miserably for me to really prioritize quarterback in this draft. I think we're going to win too many games to be in competition for a top-notch first-round quarterback, and I'm not even sure what a top-notch first-round quarterback is in this draft. I like Ty Simpson a lot. I don't like him with a top five pick. I'll take my chances with Rattler or Shuck before I go and grab a guy that I'm just not sure of justifies the really high draft pick. There are a lot of good players at other positions. I truly believe we need to make this team better, whole, all around. before we expect great things from a quarterback. So, we'll see. If Shuck wins a bunch of games in the last 7 games we have on our schedule, and we end up, 5-12 again, or maybe 6-11. I predicted we would finish 7-10. That's really not even out of the cards right now. So, yeah, we won't be in top 5 territory to go and grab the top-notch quarterback, which I don't believe exists. A guy like Ty Simpson, you know, maybe I would take him in the second round and be really happy. But if I'm happy with Shuck, if I'm happy with Rattler, all right, that's it for quarterback. Let's talk about the positions we have here, starting with wide receiver. I think it's the biggest need on the team. These are all of the wide receivers currently on the roster, and let's talk about it. Now, the first two needs, the two most important needs, in my opinion, is a big wide receiver and an upgraded guard. Ironically, that's the two positions we traded away before the trade deadline, getting rid of Rashid Shaheed at wide receiver, getting rid of Trevor Penning at guard. So, naturally you're going to want to replenish. It just so happens that we were in need of both those things before the trade deadline. So, wide receiver, you've got Chris Olave. I really believe he's a high level number 2. I think we need a big X receiver type to play opposite Chris Olave, and then any offense would be more productive. Devon Vele has the opportunity with the size he has to be that X wide receiver, but no one's convincing themselves sanely that Vele is going to be a number 1 wide receiver in this offense. He looks the part to play the type we're looking for, and you might be able to make something happen like that, but I don't think he's taking a game over anytime soon. I wish, because he's the only guy on this list with really good size. Brandon Cooks is just small. Mason Tipton small. And those top 4, Olave, Vele, Cooks, and Tipton, are the active roster members right now. Yeah, you have no more wide receivers on your team. Trey Palmer is on IR. He looks to be a special teamer and a speed guy. So next year, maybe we have our replacement for Rashid Shaheed as far as returner and speed guy. Mason Tipton's the guy on the active roster right now that can do those things, but I think Trey Palmer's going to end up taking Mason Tipton's place as your speed guy and your returner. Jalen Polk is a 6'1" guy that was a second round pick last year for New England. He was injured. We traded for him, got him for real cheap, and I liked Polk coming out. I don't think Polk could ever develop into a number 1. That's not happening. But Polka's a guy that's an all-around solid player. He could be a number 2 on your team, maybe a number 3. I'm looking at Chris Olave as our number 2. I'm looking at Trey Palmer as a speed option special teamer. I'm looking at Jalen Polk as a guy that can come in and play if there's an injury on the team. But we need a number 1. Bailey's not going to be that. Bub Means, every year we see him on IR and we don't see him playing. And in the regular season, we never see Bub Means produce that much. So he's going to be an option because he's still under contract. And in the practice squad has Kevin Austin Jr., Dante Pettis, and Ronnie Bell. Dante Pettis played a bunch of games for us this year. Kevin Austin played a couple of games for us this year. So, yeah, you look at that list, and the one thing we're missing at wide receiver is a number 1 wide receiver. Chris Olave's probably going to make the most of his career if we can get that compliment to him. I think Chris Olave at most is going to make 25 million a year. I don't want to pay him that. I think right now he's worth 15. He keeps performing well with Tyler Shuck at quarterback. Maybe you have to pay him 20 to 25 million to keep him. He's a high level number 2. I think we need a number 1, and that's the biggest area of need for the team. I just think we need a stud at wide receiver. I mean, this wide receiving core is the, kind of guys you want to throw together if you're suffering some injuries. Rashid Shaheed gets traded. You don't have a number one, and it just feels a little weak to me. It's not the weakest position group. Next year, I can see Olave, Vele, Palmer, and Polk on this team. Olave, Vele, Palmer, and Polk. You get yourself a bona fide number one. Maybe if you carry six, you'll have room for somebody else if Tipton wants to keep playing well, or if Brandon Cooksey hangs around for a while longer. Wide receiver, number one, and right there with it. My number two need for the team, offensive guard. Yeah, we traded away Trevor Penning, and that's our guard situation now. Our starters, Dylan Reduns and Cesar Ruiz. Everyone wants to move away from Cesar Ruiz. I think it's going to take an investment to move away from Cesar Ruiz. A big high investment. We're going to have a guy that comes in here who's expecting to start, and he'll probably get the left guard gig first before he ever replaces Cesar Ruiz. But we got to get somebody. Dylan Reduns is doing okay. He's an okay run blocker. He's run blocking better at left guard than Trevor Penning was. But Trevor Penning is a really good run blocker. Just couldn't seem to do it from the guard position. Dylan Reduns is just okay. If you re-sign Dylan Reduns after this year and you want to make him your starting left guard and he's got flexibility, looked awful at tackle in preseason, but he can play both sides of the line. So, still think you're struggling there. We're going to see what happens the rest of the year with Dylan Reduns and Cesar Ruiz as your starters. And if it's a patchwork thing, but it feels like it's working out okay, well then, maybe you re-sign Reduns. Torricelli Simpkins sees some improvement, and then you're not horribly off. But I really think you need a stud. I think it's time to invest at the guard position. You spent a first rounder on Cesar Ruiz years ago, and you didn't quite hit. I think it's time to invest in guard again. That's my belief. Kind of hope it's something the Saints do. I look at the depth at guard, and I don't see anything exciting. Xavier Truss has been on the team for over a month now. He's not seeing any playing time before the undrafted Simpkins. Will Clapp was signed to 1 year and then got hurt. Will Clapp's been wearing a headset and helping the coaches with the offensive line during his rehabilitation this year. And yeah, maybe Clapp retires and becomes an assistant O-line coach. But if he does decide to keep playing, maybe we re-sign Will Clapp and he'll be a good backup option, but not a starter. Nick Saldiveri never worked out. He's always hurt, even when he had a chance, and he had a real chance to take a lead and grab a spot this year before he got hurt. He just can't seem to do it. I mean, we're scrambling for backup centers, and Nick Saldiveri was supposed to be a guy that can come in here and play guard and center and do it well. He's still under contract, and we'll see if he makes it through the offseason next year, but I'm not expecting Nick Saldiveri to do anything. Landon Young, another one. He's a backup tackle guard, can play both positions, both sides of the line. He gets injured right out of the gate. We only signed him the 1 year. Maybe we resign Landon Young again, but I still don't think that that's a starter. So maybe Will Clapp and Landon Young are your backup center guard, tackle guard. I still think you need a guard. Simpkins, I don't think is your answer. He had one good game in preseason, being thrown into the mix as a center. It impressed us. Will Clapp was supposed to start that preseason game, got hurt right out of the gate, and we decided to throw Simpkins out there. We had a couple of bona fide centers on the team. We were playing mix and match during preseason. Hey, let's see what Simpkins can do. He had a decent first game. Then we put him at guard in the regular season, and he struggled. So, yeah, I'm not looking at Simpkins, an undrafted guy, to be the guy. I'm definitely not looking at him and going, no, we'll be okay. We can pass on guard. We'll be okay. Like I said, you resign Dylan Reduns and go into the next year with this group, you're going to be struggling on the offensive line again. I'm really adamant about Card being something we need. Now, if you can go and get one in free agency and you want to pay big bucks and do it that way, fine. As long as we get a bona fide starter, somebody better than Dylan Reduns and Cesar Ruiz. And looking at PFF grades, I don't think that would be that hard to do. I didn't mention center on this list down here. Offensive guard could have very well been interior offensive lineman because I am worried about McCoy's health. Right now, Luke Fortner looks fine. I think he's playing well above expectations. Last year, when McCoy got hurt, everything went to crap, to hell in a handbasket. And this year, McCoy gets hurt. Fortner's played 2 games now, and we've actually won one of them. Yeah, it's not the dire straits we were in last year. Tip of the cap to Fortner for that. And, maybe we got us a decent backup option here. If he can finish the rest of the year starting at center and we don't have obvious glaring needs, then it'll be a relief. All right, let's go to the next offensive position. That's tight end. We all know we need a complete tight end. You look at our tight end list right there, and what I see is Juwan Johnson is a receiving tight end. Foster Morrow's your complete tight end. Foster Moreau is the type of tight end that should be starting, that isn't a liability in the run game and who can get out in his routes and make things happen as a receiver, too. Yeah, we need that complete guy. We have him in Moreau, but he's probably, after the injury and recovery and everything else, he's not getting involved this year in this offense. He might be a little past his prime now. We need a complete tight end. Juwan Johnson should be your receiving tight end, your third down, long yardage option at tight end. Juwan Johnson, an undrafted wide receiver, should not be the guy you're rolling out on first and second down, trying to get the running game going. So, yeah, we need an all around tight end. Jack Stoll's your run blocking tight end. He's injured right now. So, also on the active roster right now is Zaire Mitchell Hayden. We got him off of the practice squad of the Ravens because he's a really good run blocker. He's taken Jack Stoll's place. I think he had a catch in this past game, but making things happen as a run blocker. So, what else do we have? We have quarterback Taysom Hill. Yeah, that's just an option there. I don't think it's somebody you want to start a game with. And then on the practice squad, Maliki Mataval and Trayton Welch. Trayton Welch, just like Juwan Johnson, former wide receiver, he doesn't get it done in the run game. Trayton Welch would be a great guy to have on the active roster right now. You had to go and pluck Mitchell Payton off of the Ravens practice squad because you really needed a run blocker because Jack Stoll's hurt. And you don't have another run blocker on the team. We had to go and get a guy. That means Matterval is not going to be, the tight end of the future. He would have his opportunity right now if he was a decent run blocker. We wouldn't have to go and get another guy. Matterval's not it. Welch as a run blocker is not it. And Mason Pline is a guy who we were trying to put on the active roster. Got hurt his first game with the Saints, and he's on IR for the rest of the year now. I don't know if he probably factors into the practice squad at some point, maybe. But ideally, you want 4 tight ends. You want your top 2 tight ends to be complete tight ends, guys that can run block and catch. And you don't have that. You have one, Foster Moreau. I don't mind Moreau being number 2, being that he's a solid all-around guy. Then you have your run blocker install, and then you could use a pass catcher, which is Juwan Johnson, who's getting paid way too much to just be a pass catcher. I would rather get rid of Juwan Johnson, have Trayton Welch as my 4th tight end pass catcher, okay, and go out and get a complete tight end. That's what I would rather do. Next year, this tight end room should have a bona fide number 1 all around tight end with Foster Moreau as the backup. Run blocking tight end and Jack Stoll, I think you can improve there too. There's a Oscar Delp in the draft I'm really loving right now as a run blocking tight end. That last game Georgia played, man, Delp was on it. He missed one block as far as I could see the whole dang game. It was impressive. Yeah. So, and then, the tight end would, is that a part of the identity of that Kellen Moore wants? He's always had a tight end, receiving tight end. He's always had a running game everywhere he's gone. I think it should be important. Jack Stoll's a guy that can run block, but it wouldn't surprise me if we drafted two tight ends in this upcoming draft. Tight end's pretty important to me. That's number three. Number four on my list is a new addition. That's running back. I've dropped quarterback off of the needs, the immediate needs. And I think running back has reared its head because of Alvin Kamara's inconsistencies. And then, of course, Kendre Miller getting hurt again. Right now, your only running backs on the active roster are Alvin Kamara, Devin Neal, and Audric Estime. So, and you've only got one other player on the roster at all, Evan Hull, who's on the practice squad. So, yeah, we had Edwards Hilaire. He decided to go sign with the Chiefs practice squad. We had Velus Jones on the active roster for a while. Velus Jones decided to go sign with Seattle's practice squad. I think he got released the day after they signed him because they needed the room for some other position. And I'm not sure where Velus Jones is at right now. He might still be in the mix. I don't know where Cam Akers is at. I don't know where Valladay or whatever the other guy was in off season, preseason. We had a bunch of running backs come in and out through here. We haven't seen Evan Hall yet. We haven't seen Audric Estime yet, but he's on the active roster. He may get some touches in the next couple of weeks. And Devin Neal, I really like. I like Devin Neal as third down guy, a third back. You know, a guy that could either, a guy that could be a number two should one of your top two backs get hurt. So Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, yeah. Miller can't stay healthy. Kamara's getting too old. He looks like he's lost a step. If this team's going to have a running identity, we're going to need a good running back. I love Devin Neal. He's a six-round pick. But if we want to get a guy in day two of the draft, if we want to go and get Haynes out of Michigan or uh, Williams, is that the kid in what? No, Coleman. The kid in Washington. Claiborne, the running back from Wake Forest. If we want to go and address running back in the day two, third round, I wouldn't be against it. We can move away from Alvin Kamara. And yeah, let's get an identity. You need good running backs. You need a good offensive line if you're going to run the ball. All right, so guard is important. You're going to need tight ends that can block. Hey, wide receivers that can block wouldn't be a bad idea either. Devon Bailey did a good job blocking this past game. He played the majority of the snaps, and he only got one catch, but he was a run blocking fool. But yeah, running back's important to me. Alvin Kamara, just kiss him goodbye. Kendre Miller, yay, you're healthy half the season. That would be great. You, Devin Neal, but I need another guy. And if Audric Estime can be that guy, we'll see, but it's not likely. So I'm looking at running back in round three in this upcoming draft. That's what I'm thinking about. And the last position I'm going to mention on offense, we've talked about quarterback already, is offensive tackle. We've got Awesome Richards right now playing right tackle because Fuanga's injured, and Awesome Richards is getting beat every other play. He's missing wide open guys that he should have blocked. It's bad. He's getting bull rushed into the quarterback. It's bad. But, you know, he can play left and right tackle. I think he's highlighted at guard too. Richards may be a guy that they keep around. I think originally for the Cowboys, Richards was a late third or a fourth round pick, maybe a fifth. So, but we have Richards and Xavier Truss. We haven't seen anything yet. Um, Kelvin Banks and Fuanga are the future, and Kelvin Banks isn't a very good run blocker, so My Miko's meowing down here. He wants some lovin's. Why don't you come up here? Come on. We need a bona fide backup. That's the way I feel. Like I say, Landon Young, you re-sign him. Maybe he's your primary backup tackle. We'd be starting Landon Young at right tackle instead of Austin Richards, maybe. You know, I don't know. Young was a sixth round guy. I think Richards was a fourth round guy. Easton Kilty, Barry Wesley, both of them undrafted guys. Xavier Truss is an undrafted guy. So backup tackles certainly something we can get. I think if you can get a tackle in the fourth round or fifth round to come in and compete with Awesome Richards, that wouldn't be bad. I say Landon Young, we'll see. We'll see. But it's fifth on my list for offense. All right. Let's go to defense now and talk about the greatest positions of need. And it's everywhere. We know what Brandon Staley wants to do. And Brandon Staley might want to go and grab his guy at any position that there is. We're going to start with cornerback. Uh, he inherited Alante Taylor. He inherited Kool-Aid McKinstry. He inherited Brajon Wright. He had Yadam in San Francisco last year. He saw what Yadam could do. He figured Yadam could fit into his defense well enough, and we signed Yadam to a free agent contract. Yadam hasn't looked very well in this defense. So Brandon Staley's judgment on this, I don't know. He thought the guy could do it. Well, Yadam is a really good special teamer. Maybe we're keeping Yadam off the field and it's hindering his development in this defense because we're trying to save that fourth round comp pick and because Yadam looks so bad right out of the gate. So has Staley put his stamp on the secondary? Yeah, he drafted Quincy Riley. He knew what his defense was. He went and got a guy that could fit in the defense, and lo and behold, Quincy Riley, although he's a fourth round pick, is starting for this defense and playing well. That's the thing I'm talking about. Yeah, he inherited Kool-Aid McKinstry. McKinstry's making it in this defense. But McKinstry's probably not the guy Brandon Staley would have gone and grabbed if he would have been in control of the draft, drafting players for his defense. So just because Kool-Aid's managing doesn't mean that's the guy he wants. Now he loves Alante Taylor, and it seems like Taylor's getting better and better in this defense. If Taylor keeps playing like he's played the last three games, then he's worth re-signing. He's worth 15 million a year, and he is a star player for Brandon Staley. But it's so important to emphasize this. Staley would not have drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry. There may be a cornerback out there that fits Staley's defense perfectly the way he sees it, and he goes and gets this guy. And Kool-Aid McKinstry's looking for playing time. Okay, that's a possibility at cornerback. Another thing is you're one injury away from Isaac Yadam having to play. You got Taylor at nickel, McKinstry, Riley on the outside. If if Taylor goes down, you're putting in Ugo Amadi at nickel, and then your backup to Amadi at nickel is Terrell Burgess, who's a safety. So, you might be okay at nickel should Taylor get hurt. But either one, outside cornerback in this system or a star type player in this system for Staley, is definitely all on the table. Ugo Amadi can play some cornerback. We got Michael Davis, who was an undrafted guy, and we put him on the active roster because I think we got him off a practice squad. Yadam was hurt at the time, but we never put Yadam on IR. We just slapped Michael Davis on the active roster, and now that Yadam's back, we have seven cornerbacks on the active roster. Taylor, McKinstry, Riley, Yadam, Wright, Amadi, and Davis, all of them on the active roster. Dallas Beanham and Jaden Price are on the practice squad. They looked okay for preseason, but yeah, I think cornerback, in my opinion, is going to be a defensive position that you really have to look at. Like I said, we can get a defensive player at any position because Brandon Staley wants his guys. Some guys are making it right now, not necessarily his guy. So I would address cornerback in the first 3 rounds this year if I were the Saints. I would seriously look at that. I think Brandon Staley needs some pieces. Whether, it's another safety, I've got safety down here too, or cornerback. I think Staley's going to want to populate the back end and the front end with his players. So, number 2 on the defensive list is edge rusher. This is another situation where he inherits a bunch of players. He inherits a bunch of defensive ends, and he wants them to play outside linebacker. Well, Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan are not covering running backs and tight ends in space. They're being asked to rush the passer just about every play, even though Staley's defense probably wants those guys to cover some too. It's the kind of player they are. I mean, I don't think we're going to go and draft defensive ends and expect them to play an edge rusher in this system. I mean, that's what we have right now. I think we need outside linebacker types who can cover too, who can also cover. That's the issue at linebacker. That's the issue at edge rusher. The other issue is Chase Young. It looks like he's going to fit in this defense just fine. You want somebody on the other side. We've got Chase Young. It's looking great. Remember, Brandon Staley wants, Malcolm Floyd or Khalil Mack. That's what he wants. Brandon Staley had Mack, who got 17 sacks. Chase Young ain't getting 17 sacks anytime soon. Neither is Carl Granderson. So yeah, as well as Jordan and Grando are playing in this defense for what they're being asked to do, I think Brandon Staley certainly wants another edge rusher, a difference maker opposite Chase Young that can really put the pressure on the quarterback. I think edge rusher may be a stronger need than cornerback. Probably in you guys' mind, probably so. If you want a really good edge rusher, really good cornerback, you're going to have to address it early in the draft. So, and you notice the bottom half of this list is littered with players that Staley wants, players that fit this scheme. Chris Rump, who played with under Staley before, and Chris Rump looks well as a backup in this system. Fadil Diggs is a late round pick, and he's on the practice squad, but it's the kind of type of player that Staley wanted for his defense. And then Jonah Williams is more of a defensive lineman, but he can stand up and rush the passer too. It's another guy who played for the Rams who would fit Staley's defense, he feels like very well. He went and got him. The guy's on the active roster. So yeah, I'm expecting a big time player at edge rusher that fits Staley's defense to come in here and make an impact. Third on my list is defensive line. I had to include defensive ends and defensive tackles here because the Saints could use all of it. Brian Bresee is your number one defensive end, and he's no good against the run. Nathan Shepard, Jonathan Bullard, those are guys that I think you can improve on if you prioritize defensive line in the draft, especially when you're talking about that three tech defensive tackle, excuse me, or someone that can just play the end, a 300-pound guy next to the nose tackle. That's what these defensive ends are on this list here. And we got Bullard because he was a good run player, and he does look good every now and then. Nathan Shepard's been hot and cold. These guys are working their way into this system, and maybe Shepard and Bullard turn out to be okay. We keep stopping the run like we did against Carolina, and I'm not going to be too fretful about it. But Brian Bresee's lack of run stopping, and then our overall defense stopping the run has not been good this year. We're seeing some improvements. Some games it's good, some games it's not. I think defensive end is a way to improve on this team. And then at nose tackle, you've got Devon Godshaw and Christian Boyd. They inherited Christian Boyd. They immediately went out and signed Devon Godshaw because we need a big time nose tackle for this defense to work. Now, Godshaw's working out okay right now. I think Brandon Staley would not shy away from getting the future at nose tackle for his defensive scheme. They like Ridgeway. They kept him around on IR, and now that he's healthy, they found a spot for him on the active roster. They like Ridgeway. We also have a guy named Kosiah Izzard on the practice squad, and Vernon Broughton, who's going to play end and defensive tackle and nose tackle. He can play it all, and he's on IR for the year, but he is a draft pick, a third rounder for this team. So Brandon Staley probably feels like he has a piece in Broughton right now. Not an every down typical nose tackle type, but a flexible guy. But I still think it's important. I mean, it's too much hot and cold with Nathan Shepard. If Jonathan Bullard was a every down starter, then I'd feel really good about it. But I just don't right now. Brian Brissy is third down at best when he's out there on early downs. He's a liability, and I think you can improve at defensive line, both spots. So I'd be looking at that. If it all falls into place, if there's a guy who's a three tech defensive tackle and he's a really good guy and he's sitting there in the third round and we like him, we can grab him, or a nose tackle. If a really good nose tackle's there in the second round, someone like Caleb Banks, then yeah, we might grab him. And if Staley sees him as the future of the middle of this defense on the line, then yeah, I can't argue with it. I think it's important though, slightly more important than the last two positions on defense. Safety, I have it at number 4 here. I love the depth at linebacker. That's why it's listed last year. But at safety, Staley's already injected quite a bit. He goes out and signs Justin Reed. I'm not sure how this is working out for him right now, but Brandon Staley wanted Justin Reed, thought he could play in this defense well, and Justin Reed's improving a little bit. Maybe by the end of the year, Justin Reed is worth 12 million a year, what we're paying him. But Staley has his stamp on this position with Reed and with Jonas Sanker, who we drafted. He also went out and got Julian Blackman. And remember, Blackman's a guy that Staley wanted, was dying to have, and loved having him for the brief time he had him before he got hurt. Julian Blackman is Brandon Staley guy. I think we're going to re-sign Julian Blackman. He also brought in Terrell Burgess, who played in his defense before. He's got his stamp all over this secondary class. He inherited Howden. He inherited Amadi. Amadi, I think, fits in the Staley system pretty good as a versatile backup guy. So safety's not really high on the list, especially if Blackman comes back, because I'd rather see Blackman and Sanker than Reed and Sanker at this point. But you got Reed for 2 more years and he's getting paid a lot of money. And then you've got some good depth with Burgess there. So safety's there. If there's a safety that fits in Brandon Staley's defense and he falls at the right spot, they shouldn't shy away from it. I think the safety position is not just free safety, strong safety. It's part of that star mix and playing linebacker like Isaiah Stallbird is doing, a former safety playing linebacker on third down because we don't have any linebackers that can cover. And that's the last position I'm going to mention, linebacker. Yeah, we just got so much depth here. Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Danny Stutzman, Isaiah Stallbird, Jalen Ford. And then you've got Nefi Sewell and Iku Leota on the practice squad. Sewell and Leota have both played in the regular season this year. Ford is on the active roster. Stallbird is getting a lot of play on third down because, yeah, Pete Werner's not that good in coverage. What are you going to do? Danny Stutzman's not that good in coverage either. I mean, you need somebody who can tackle and who can get to the ball. Pete Werner racks up a ton of tackles. Danny Stutzman is a tackle machine, and the few snaps he has, he gets a tackle just about every time he's out there. I think Stutzman has 29 tackles this season. He's just never out there, but when he is, he's making tackles. That's a guy that Brandon Staley drafted. He wanted a guy who could play downhill and be good against the run and who's a sure tackler. He would also like a guy that could cover. Stutzman, that's the thing he needs to work on. Obviously, the same thing Pete Werner needs to work on. Why is Werner getting more snaps than Stutzman? Because Stutzman might be as big a liability in coverage as Werner is. And, get him out there and let's see what they can do. But I just got to emphasize it's last on this list on defense. But if there's a linebacker out there like Arvil Reese, who looks like he could fit into this defense really well and play multiple positions, edge rusher and linebacker, then yeah, Pete Werner and even Danny Stutzman be damned because he's going to want to go and get his guy. Stutzman is his guy. And as long as Demario Davis is healthy, there's a slim chance anyone else is going to start ahead of him. But, come on. He told Father Time to take a nap, but eventually, yeah. So, well, there you go. That is the way I'm looking at it. You let me know in the comments what you think. I think priority for the Saints this year should be wide receiver and guard and tight end. I think that should be a priority. I think we need to fix this offense and we need to keep introducing parts into the defense. It's going to take a couple of years to get it all done. But yeah, I would have my eye on cornerback and edge rusher on defense to start with. And then any other piece that can fit in this Brandon Staley defense. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. I'm going to be covering the Saints. And if you love them, you'll come subscribe, come back to the channel. We'll be doing a lot of videos about college football players. We're going to break down the players in college at every position. We're going to do that extensively toward the end of the season and in the off season. And yeah, we're still going to be doing a lot of mock drafts and stuff like that too. Until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?